Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Creating a Fantastical Life podcast. It's Jen, and today I am with my soul sister, my I don't want to play favorites, but my favorite coach that I've met to this date, Yolanda O'Bannon. Yolanda is a life coach who helps sensitive, spiritually minded women with practical self-care so that you can stop eating all the things, feeling low-grade depressed, feeling stressed and mad at your loved ones. And you can find her at yolandaobannon.com. She is also a travel writer and Tibet expert who, with her husband Lobsang, helps make Tibet travel more simple, safe, and ethical at yowengdu.com. That all the links will be in the show notes. And she's a plant-based foodie fanatic and lover of movies and hikes. Thanks for joining us, Yolanda.
Jen Sway, I'm so happy to be here with you, sweetheart. It's wonderful to see you.
Yes, it's been so good. So Yolanda and I, similar to Mattia, who maybe you guys have met if you watched the first day of episodes, and along with another guest that's going to be coming on here later on, we all met through our business coach together, and we were all also in the mystery room, which is like kind of her mastermind. And immediately Yolanda and I, because she hosted an in-person event, Yolanda and I like just clicked. We were like, something about us, just like there's soul resonance. And if you were to look at us, we're very different people.
I was just thinking about this. I was thinking before this call, I had never thought about it. Jen, I think I'm 40 years older than you.
What?
I'm 61.
Oh my gosh, no. What?
Which is just
I'm
crazy.
24, almost 25.
Isn't that just nuts? And I completely feel like, like you just said, like total resonance, total, I just feel like we get each other, and it's just like, okay, it's just a beautiful, weird world.
Yeah, and we were also, hanging out with Rose, who's in her 70s. I get along well with old souls, old
ladies.
Yeah, but in the best way. I call myself a baby grandma. Like I have friends and like my girlfriends who are like also in their 20s and whatever. We have a group chat that's called Baby Grandmas because we're like,
I love it.
That's our vibe. We're like, let's sit down with a book instead of going out. Let's get some tea instead of some drinks. Let's go to bed early.
Baby grandmas. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get started. I could talk to you just about life for hours on end. So
exactly.
This whole series is all about unbrainwashing yourself, really undoing those deep conditionings. And what was something for you that you were brainwashed to believe about yourself, other people, or the world that you later found out was just not the truth?
There's so many things, but probably one of the biggest things is that in my family, my parents grew up in the Depression, and they both picked cotton as children, and like literally very, very poor. And they kind of proceeded and progressed and grew into kind of middle classhood, right? So there's this strong perception in my family that related to that somehow, that rich people, first of all, we're not rich people. That's a very strong kind of message in my family. And that rich people are bad and greedy. So there was actually, if I think of how I think of rich people, it would be like rich bastard and rich bitch. Like those are kind of the terms that were used. And like,
that's hilarious.
I know it hurts my soul to say that now, like even to have those words come out of my mouth, but it's just like literally, not so much the bitch one, but like rich bastard. It's like that was basically how I thought of like a rich person, or that rich bastard. And so like now, having come through so much unlearning of all that bullshit, now Lobsang, my husband Lobsang, and I joke, and we say, if we see somebody with a very nice house or like super, obviously super wealthy, we're just like, God bless you, rich people. And we're rich people. So we're like God bless us too. And God bless the people who are richer than us. It's just like a complete, it's a complete 180 for that. And the other thing that I think about with that is that when I was in college, actually in grad school, I wanted to go, not even just college, I wanted to go to Europe for a year abroad when I was in grad school. And my parents were so against it. And I remember that they said, like, we're not that kind of people. It's kind of like, who do you think you are? We're not that kind of people that go to Europe. Even though hilariously, my dad was in the Air Force. And so I grew up in Europe, different places. Yeah, like as a kid, because he was assigned to Europe. But in their minds, that was just different than just like going to Europe for a year abroad. And I did end up going, and I traveled a whole lot in my life. But that just that perception that we're not that kind of people is something that I really deeply had to unlearn. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to that. And, it's almost like it's really like almost laughable, I think, in hindsight, especially as a business owner. I mean, you have two businesses, and money just being the truth of what energy exchange looks like in today's society, that people can personalize it so much, and we can put it so much on other people. So I want to ask, like, for your journey and uncovering that, what was it like when you first realized, like, okay, maybe this wasn't serving you, or like this isn't true, or like did you meet somebody, like how did you first uncover that conditioning? And also, what was the truth that you replaced it with? Like, if they're not rich bitches, if they're not rich bastards, or like, what does it mean to have a lot of money or be rich?
I'll start with the second one first, because how I think of it now is like, I think of wealthy people. I don't, I don't in my mind have that kind of Scroogey idea anymore. I just like, or like some rich capitalist. I mean, maybe sometimes I think that, but it's just like, mostly when I think of rich people, I think of the happy people who are donating to causes that they love. So like, I just think of people who are incredibly kind of realized and effective at what they're doing. And they're also like I mean, we know so many rich coaches, like, you and I, and we're just familiar with many of our peers who are just like rich people. And they're out there doing amazing work in the world. So there are people who are providing incredible services and products for people. And then they are receiving that energy back in terms of money. So it's just like, my perception is 100% switch, that I think of them as these amazing beings out there who are creating like wonderful things in the world, helping people, serving people, and in return they're getting the money. I don't know how. I think it wasn't really until I got into sort of coaching, the coaching world, and this kind of thinking, which was just a couple years ago, 3 years ago, that I started to see that the way that I think is just that I thought was so harmful. I think when it came up is just like when I started to create my own business, which I know how it was. Lobsang, my husband, wanted to make this Tibet travel business. And I had such a resistance about it because, of course, my thoughts about business owners were that they're greedy and terrible and cheaters and car salesmen and all this kind of stuff. So I had a lot of resistance. And finally, he's very persistent. So he finally kind of won me over. But as we started to make that business, it got in the way a lot for me to have this idea of, rich people being bad or people making money with bad. So I had to do a lot of just internal work. Just over the years, I would just kind of notice these thoughts of just like, oh, if you're selling somebody something that's bad, you're trying to put something over on them, you're trying to cheat them or something. It's just like, I knew in my heart that wasn't true, that we're providing it with our Tibet business, we're providing Tibetans amazing value, helping them with their livelihoods. And then we're providing the people who go to Tibet, with the agents that we refer them to, they are getting this amazing experience with real Tibetans who give them the best possible experience. So I knew that in my brain, but I had to really, I knew that in my heart, but I had to like convince my brain that that was true. That makes sense.
Yeah, it 100%. And I think everybody has money beliefs to like undo and like kind of look at, but it speaks to kind of how if you're not being aware and consciously choosing what to think instead, or, you know, questioning these beliefs that you grew up with, questioning how it is that your relationship is with things like money and other people, that it can lead you to feeling confused about who you are and like make you feel so ungrounded. And then everyone can kind of feel that.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to hear that you were able to kind of just transform that mindset, especially because in your heart you knew like the truth, which was that this is great. Money's not bad. Money's not evil. Like everybody's being helped by
Yeah.
this. It really is an energy exchange. But I also want to hear from your perspective of with Buddhism, and because you have such an interesting background with that, and Lobsang too, as a former monk, and you know, you teaching at the monastery, was it?
I taught at it's a monastic institution, so it's like a monastic college, sort of. I guess that's the best equivalent I can think of.
Okay, yeah, like I mean,
Yeah.
if you could share that, because obviously there's so much around, you know, it's like monk life is almost an antithesis to normal people life. It's the ultimate rebel of fuck society. This is not how I want to go.
Yeah.
And then Lobsang being the one who wanted to start that business. Like, how did that how did that juggle and like money beliefs and all those things?
Yeah. It's so interesting because I had never really thought about that before. Of course, Lupsang was a monk for 20 freaking years, right? It's kind of amazing that he was the one who wanted to start the business. But in Buddhism, or I started to say in Tibetan Buddhism, which is what he follows and what I follow, but it's any Buddhism. There's something like there's the Eightfold Path, and one of the things is right livelihood. So there is, like, built into the deep core of Buddhism, there is this path for making money, making your living, integrated in an honest, wholesome way. So I don't think he like kind of didn't have any problem with it. When he was a monk, he wasn't out there earning money. But as soon as he became a lay person, so we met each other in this little village in northern India where a large Tibetan community lives, where I was just traveling at first and ended up staying and living a year. Met him in his monastic institution, and then we decided our story is very bizarre, but we decided before we had a romantic relationship, just when we were friends, we decided to come back to the United States together, and he would disrobe and we would be together. I know, it's weird, right?
It's like the ultimate, like if he wanted to, he would. Like he left his old monastery and was like, I will wait for you, you know, or you're like, I'll wait for
Yeah.
you to like, you know, finish this
Yes.
whole thing. Like it.
Yes. Well, just to share with your audience what you're talking about is, we were friends and we would just hang out, and I thought he was just the coolest person and most wonderful person. I remember saying to my friend, I had a Dutch friend in the place called Darmsala, and I remember saying, like, "Oh, this is awful. I really like this monk, but this is like the extreme of unrequited, like it's an impossible situation, because I had no intention of, I'm Buddhist, so I don't, I have no interest in having a monk break their vows or do anything terrible, right?" So, and she was just like, "Yeah, that really sucks." So one
How
day after that,
supportive. That sucks.
yeah, well, she was being
Yeah,
supportive. It's
no,
like, yeah, it sucks, like there's no way out, right? And then one day after that, we were taking a walk. He would have Sundays off, and we would take a walk as friends. And he said, "I'm not going to be a monk forever." And I was just like, "What?" Tell me when you're not going to be a monk, stop being a monk. And he said, "My degree finishes in 2 months, and after that, I'm going to stop." And I just knew in my heart, it's the weirdest, like nothing before or since has really been like this, but I just knew in my heart what he was saying. And I said to him, we had never said anything romantic to each other before that moment. He was a monk. And I said, "I'll wait for you." And he said, "Good." And that's exactly what we did.
oh,
So,
my
like,
heart's squealing inside. It's like
2
my
months
favorite love
later.
story.
Yeah. So with that, it's just like, I think Lobsang has no issues at all, like on the Buddhist front, about money. And then And then just him being persistent allowed us to have a business. And then me, like, I guess slowly encountering people who had much better money mindsets than I did, and seeing how it was blocking me in our business finally like helped me to kind of be free of that way of thinking, my old
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. I mean, you have a lot of that's of like just leaping into like, leaping with your faith and trusting yourself because, like I think like you were about to say like 2 months later, he finished this road and then you guys moved to America and got
Yeah,
married.
we came back to the United States, and like within, he was still a monk on the plane. We, hey cat, we came back here, and like within a week or a couple of weeks, um, monks need to disrobe officially. He went through a small process to officially stop being a monk. And then within a week or two after that, we got married. We were just sitting there one day and we're like, dang, we need to get married so we can get all of our papers in order. We're like, yeah, all right. We got married, and 20 something years later, here we are.
I love that. It's such a prime example of, there's just so many different ways to find your person and the process looks
Yeah.
different for everyone. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And you had that trust in yourself, which is so key because there'd be so many people who are just so afraid to go after something like that and trust that things are going to be okay and trust their knowing.
Jen, that's something that I think is really critical for what I now think is key for my life coaching practice. And one of the things that we've learned from our wonderful coach, Simone, is that, that massive faith and trust and connection to your intuition. So I've always had that, actually. Like many of the major decisions in my life came from trusting that intuition, but just like a very actively connecting to it and actively pursuing it kind of on a daily basis is like, really huge for for everything I do. And I know for you too, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like for everyone, like everyone has intuition, but it's almost like how many layers of conditioning do you have to go through to get there? It's really like the oil that's like down buried, and it's like, okay, you got to do some fracking, and it's gonna kill the environment of like all your lies that you've grown up to believe, all these things that you
Ooh,
built, maybe the career, maybe even the relationship, like maybe you're married and like it was all built off of really shitty beliefs of who you need to be, who you should be, what you should do, what you need to do, and
yes.
has no room for what you actually want to do. And like you got to frack that shit out.
Oh my God, this example is so perfect. Yeah, because you gotta really fuck up the environment, the old environment, right? So usually fracking we don't like, but it's just like in this case, it was like some shit environment that you really need to just like break up and get rid of to get down to the gold, the oil, the
Yeah.
diamonds. Yeah.
Yeah. On that topic, I know for you, freedom is waking up with a mind and heart at peace. And I love that phrase. I love that so much. And it's very, I don't know, spiritual. uh, and I also know you're a highly sensitive person, HSP for short, and that's like an actual thing. So can you touch upon like for people who want to do this work to decondition, and like it can be such a jarring process because you're kind of going through many breaks in your brain and breaks in your environment. You're questioning the way that things have been, things that like will be. How have you been able to hold your ground and still be able to connect to your own peace when you're going through change, evolution, and like this growth?
It's a great question, Jen. I mean, generally speaking, the two, I think of it as kind of two wings of a bird, like that are kind of my wings, I want to say anchors, but it's a weird analogy. So it's like one is choosing useful thoughts, and one is kind of calming and settling my nervous system down. So those two things are what allow me to kind of grow and expand, right? A perfect example is this podcast today. So I posted on my social media, it's like, oh my God, I have this idea about myself that I'm not a good public speaker. And it's like, I'm being nervous and I'll choke and I'll, say really weird, awkward things and blah, blah. So this is say a few days ago, I'm thinking like, oh God, I'm going to do this podcast. I'm going to tank. It's going to be freaking awful. So just completely blinders on with this like kind of negative story that has nothing to do with the reality that you are a dear friend. You are a sweetheart. You're a great host. Like you would never let me just like crash and burn. I'm actually a good podcast guest. Like there's no problem. It's just this old story that my brain is like super attached to. And in the same way that all of us have these craptastic old stories that whatever they are, that our brains are like super attached to in the old life, right? In the life that we kind of don't want to be in. So what I did, like it's just a perfect example of kind of encapsulates everything that I do all the time. It's like, first of all, I sat down and thought of like a whole lot of counter thought, like what's the truth that I'm not seeing when I'm stuck in this belief that I'm shitty at public speaking and all this kind of things. And like the truth is like I'm learning and I'm growing. Like that's one belief. And it's like, yeah, I may make a mistake and that may be fine. I will make a mistake. I'm human. I'll say something weird. I'm human. And that's actually a good thing. That's a testament to my growth and my learning and how I'm becoming, even better at everything I do. So, Jen is my friend. She's like a sweetheart. She'll be kind to me on the podcast. Important thoughts, like things that I don't see when I'm like laser focused on how people are going to perceive me. It's like there's somebody out there who needs to hear something that we're going to talk about today. And that one, it brings tears to my eyes, honestly. It's like that one is what really motivates me. It's just like, who the shit cares? Like what is going on for me? It's just like, there's actually somebody, I mean, I care obviously, but like there's somebody out there who needs to hear something for their life to be just like 1% better. It's not gonna, it doesn't have to be like the revolution, but it's like 1% better. Somebody's life could be made better by something they hear, by just what we talk about.
And that's beautiful. I think how people can also think and like apply that is like you found a motivation, a reason to do something that was stronger than all the fears, all the doubts, all of the potential things that could go wrong, all the anxiety. And that's like helped you create the courage and bravery to just come on here and be yourself and let yourself be seen, let yourself be heard. Yeah. Which for so many people who are more introverted or highly sensitive or whatever it is, like everyone has the innate desire to be liked and the fear of rejection, the fear of looking dumb, right? Looking like a fool or taken advantage of or whatever. And like to understand yourself so well to see that you don't ever just make decisions from one place, that if you can actually open your perspective up and see like, well, what are the reasons that you do want to do it? There's something there. Like your heart's desires are so much more wise than your brain's fear.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Say that again. That's so nice.
Yeah, your heart's desires are so much stronger than your brain's fears.
Oh my God, that's gorgeous.
Thanks. That's from my brain that like didn't get much sleep actually last night.
Yes, because your brain, your inner wisdom is so powerful.
Yeah. And that's funny because I was writing affirmations before this because I hadn't gotten much sleep at all. And I was like, you know what? On my worst days, I'm still incredible and extremely transformative. Like the things I say are still transformative, even when I feel shitty. And it's like,
voila, like right there. And so Jen, another piece, and then like, so that's the thought piece, right? And then the other piece is like calming my nervous system. So like, as a highly sensitive person, I can tend toward anxiety.
Oh, and like, can you actually break down highly sensitive person first?
Absolutely. So a highly sensitive person, there's is a designation by this woman. I have her book here for those who might see this. It's called A Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine and Aaron. It's a designation that was created by her. She realized that there's 15 to 20% of the population that is genetically what she calls highly sensitive. And that just means that your brain processes input from the environment extra, kind of like more in greater detail. An example that I was thinking of before, this example that they say that like Eskimos have 50 words for snow. Have you ever heard that?
No, but that's fascinating.
They do. And I actually looked this up and it's actually true, apparently. So Eskimos have 50 words for snow. So you and I look at snow and we're like, no, a lot of snow, a little snow.
Slush.
And, slush, ice. And, Eskimos are like, well, there's a snow that forms on the top and there's the deep ice underneath and there's cheesy, like Swiss cheese looking snow and there's brown snow and there's all kinds of snow, right? They have all this, they perceive, they're aware of all these variations. So a highly sensitive person, when they go into an environment, have kind of like extra awareness that way, particularly about people in the room, but it can be about anything. So it's like, for example, if you walk into a room, you're sensorily, you may notice that the air is fresh or stale. You may notice there's a package on the table. You may notice that the curtains are torn. You may, a highly sensitive person may notice all these things. And then if there are people in the room, you will notice like, oh, somebody's feeling mad, or those two people don't like each other, or those two really do like each other, or that person is upset about something. There's just like all this kind of layers of kind of extra awareness.
Yeah, being having, because it's honestly a gift. It just depends on how you look at it. It could be a gift, could be a curse, whatever in between. But part of the gift of being so perceptive is that you're able to pick up on so many little things. You're able to be an empath and it's another way that people are neurodivergent. Like when we think about autism, like people who just have sensory overload, people who are ADHD, who will also be more prone to rejection, sensitivity dysphoria. And that's essentially just, being very sensitive to rejection, where you just tend to take it more personally than like somebody else. And if people were to be like, don't take it personally, or like, why is there so upset? It's like, you can't help it. It's literally the way you're built, right? And so I love that you're bringing up this point that being an HSP, being a highly sensitive person, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's not that you are built defectively. It's that you're just built differently, and it's a beautiful thing, and you can learn how to partner with it.
Yes, 1000%. I mean, I only read this book like maybe 6 months or a year ago. When I found it, I just cried for relief of the normalization and the fact that there's nothing freaking wrong with me. I'm not overly sensitive. It's not like, it's just like what you said. It's like, just get over it. Don't take it so hard. Don't blah, blah, blah. It's just like, it is like in literally my genetic makeup to take it more, to take it extra. So just like realization was like this, like sinking into a warm bath, like, oh my God, this is just who I am. And there's nothing wrong with the fact that I need to recharge alone, that I hate to be in a mall. I don't like going to, nightclubs or lots of parties I have like a 2-3 hour limit, have a great time. And then boom, I need to go. Like I need to I'm over, I'm like stimulated, and many people are that same way, that you need, your needs are just different. So I just love everything you just said. It's absolutely true. But there's one like kind of hallmark of people who are highly sensitive, which is that a lot of highly sensitive people can't stand rough, scratchy clothes, or like the tags on their clothes. So like highly sensitive people like will often cut the tags out of their clothes because those little corners just like poke and stab at you, right? So it's just like, what I don't know about other people, when I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not just like a crazy person who, like, what's wrong with me that like other people can wear wool and I can't stand to wear wool because it's just so freaking scratchy to me and so abrasive, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I'm all for like, concrete examples that people can start to identify in themselves. So that was really helpful. And so for you and your journey in like kind of embracing being a highly sensitive person, being able to still, do everything that you want to do, you were mentioning how building a nervous system work and nervous system safety and all those things have been really
Yeah.
instrumental in that. Can you
Yeah.
expand more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's been just a really key piece in my journey, like in the life coaching world. I first encountered thoughts and the reframing your thoughts, and that's fantastic. But this other wing that I think of as like the whole nervous system safety and settling, that without that, changing your thoughts doesn't work, because like so many of us have a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and that's showing up in our bodies. And so to settle, for me, again, like the simplest way is like when I was getting ready for this podcast, so I was feeling anxiety, right? And so I was using, like, literally in the last few days and literally this morning, I have this ball in my hand, for if anybody's watching this one. And then, like, one way that you can settle your nervous system is something called bilateral stimulation, which a lot of people use. And in this case, you just pass the ball from one hand to the other. You got one too, of course. We just like pass it from one hand to the other. And what it does is kind of interrupt the anxiety loop in one hemisphere of your brain. It kind of introduces activity and blood flow to both sides of your brain, and it just kind of fucks up that loop. So the anxiety can't hang together, right? So I was doing that. I was doing these, a lot of people are following Andrew Huberman these days. And like I don't know if he's like a neuroscientist from Stanford. I don't know if it's his thing, but I learned it from him. I call it sippy breaths, which is just like taking a deep breath, taking a little sip on top of that, and then breathing out twice as long. So it's like this: you breathe in. So you take a deep breath into your belly, a little sip, kind of top off on top of that, and then breathe out twice as long. And you do that 3 times. And according to Huberman, it is like the single most effective breathing, calming breathing exercise you can do. So it's just like boom, you get there. And another one that I really love that I was using this morning. Well, first I went on a walk, with kind of a brisk walk, right, like up a hill to get my kind of physical energy out a little bit. And then another one that I was doing, like in the room just now before the podcast, was orienting to my space. So just another nervous system calming thing. And that one's like, I happen to be by a window. So I look out, I see the farthest thing that I can see, like if there's a horizon or just whatever I can see, have a good look at that. And then I just look around me. I look to my left. What do I see? I look to my right. What do I see? I look above me. I look below me. I look behind me on one side, behind me on another side. And then I check my exits. So if I need to get out of this room, how would I get out of this room? I also think about the last meal that I had and the next meal that I had. So all of this is like, what are you doing? So basically you are just letting your nervous system know that there are no tigers in the vicinity, like, in your old school evolutionary, right, of stress and anxiety. There's nothing dangerous in your vicinity. You're in a calm, safe space. Checking your exits, like, you have a way to get out. You're safe, that you can get out. And then of course, thinking about the meal is just like deeply evolutionarily letting your body know that you're like in a good state. You've had food and you're going to have food again. So all those things, it's just like, it's so simple. It's so not rocket science. It's like all these little things that we're talking about are just like the easiest things in the world. But doing these things, my heart is beating fast, and I start to get into that tunnel vision of like, I'm gonna fuck it up, I'm gonna choke, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. And so those things just let me get back into my brain and back into like just a calm space where I can just be myself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you so much for sharing those techniques, because they're honestly so helpful. And it can be really easy to gather tools, but then to actually build the repetition when you're in it, when you feel the stress, when you're thinking about the deadline that you have, or the person that you're going to go talk to, or this event that you need to go to, or like stress about whatever it is, to remember that you have these tools in your tool belt, especially this like one where you're looking in the environment, looking at your exits and remembering that you're fed and like whatever. That I feel like is so natural to the human body, like primarily, but we've almost forgotten about that, and that we need those things to feel safe, and that will literally just put our body at ease. How have you found ways to integrate that and remind yourself of it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jen. It's something like over time, I'd say like over the last year, I consciously practice doing these things along with a whole bunch of like self-care and emotional hygiene tools. I consciously give my best time of the morning to them. So, I used to like wake up and just be like, okay, I gotta start writing that email, deep, 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 like a little robot kind of thing. And it's like, because it's like my brain is fresh, this is the time. And now I've realized that my brain is like my greatest treasure. My brain and my body are my greatest investment, in quotes, you know? And so it's like, if I really treat my brain and my thoughts and my nervous system like my greatest key to my success and my happiness, if I want to be happy and healthy and wealthy and wise, I know the key to that is my nervous system calming and reframing my thoughts. I know that without a doubt. So if the key to that is that, then when am I going to pay attention to that? I'm going to pay attention to that first thing in the morning. So I literally just like start practicing those things. And then it doesn't come naturally until you make a habit, right? So it's just like, it's kind of weird, you're sitting there in the morning and there's nothing going wrong, but you do your orienting. Okay. And then your body just gets used to that, right? That you're doing the orienting, so that when you are in a kind of a stressed state, then it comes to you more easily. That's what I do. How do you deal with that, Jen? Kind of build those habits or.
Yeah, that's a great question too. For me, when I think about how I put my nervous system at ease recently, over the last few weeks, I've been doing a lot more reflection. But I have like a pad for people who are watching. I'll hold it up, but it's by a company called Simple Self, and it's their wellness tracker. I've used their products before. I have like a journal from them from, I don't know, like 2020, and it was really nice. But there's a little space that's a morning meditation that they call it, and you write down your focus for the day, how much sleep you've gotten, how you're feeling currently in like one word, how you can make today a good day, your affirmations, and then they have 2 spaces for that. And then there's space for throughout the day of like tracking your hydration, your meals, snacks, exercise, highlight of the day for the evening. And then they have this evening reflection of rating on a scale of 1 to 5, your energy, your productivity, motivation, stress, mood. And then you have kind of like your whole day. And I needed a physical thing, because what I was noticing was with all of my plan, oh my gosh, for the last, like since 2016, 2015, probably, I will go through a new company's, new brand's journal and just try them all out. Because I love planning. I love using physical paper. I tried using my iPad for a while. It just did not work. I love having physical paper to write down my thoughts and everything. And for me, like one of the things that would always happen is I would have all these thoughts running before I go to bed. And I would go to bed with the intention to sleep, but I would have so many thoughts. And some of my best creations or like whatever come up in the evening. And so I'm like, I don't want to lose this out. So I would just write it down on my phone, and then I'd be able to sleep. So that was like one thing, was like, I got to get it out in order to rest, and just giving myself that space to be like, okay, let me just get it out. And like, oh, this is not putting pressure, like I have to sleep right now, or like this is work time, whatever, and being gentle with myself. And then having this physical reminder in the morning has been incredibly valuable for me. I feel like I can't really do much like just by mentally taking a note. And I think so many of us do that, where we're like, we'll put a mental note in it, or like we hear it and we're like, oh, we're definitely going to do that. And then we don't. It's like this equivalent of saving an Instagram reel or a TikTok that's like talking about personal development. And it's like, oh, I'll do that later. You never do it. You never go back. So I need the actual physical reminders to really help me integrate.
I'm so with you. And I just realized, like, looks like I have a little habit. Like, this is something like I wrote a book called Manifesting Mastery a couple of years ago, and it's like the first three things in it. I went back and looked at it the other day. It's just like, oh yeah, this is still like the core and key of what we do. So we wake up in the morning, Libsam cooks breakfast, and the first thing we do is after breakfast is say, like, what are you grateful for? And we kind of like holler it out, like, and just have this little thing that we do like every morning, like kind of it's like our version of like that path that you're talking about. It's like, what are you grateful for? I'm grateful that it's raining, or I'm grateful, blah, blah, whatever, just some silly thing. I'm grateful for bread, and then
Always
like,
grateful for bread.
love
Always
bread.
yeast.
And then, who do you want to bless? It just means, like, who do you want to send
Oh, I
good juju,
love
good
that.
vibes to, right? So it's like the people in Ukraine, or, my mom, or like whatever. And then, like, what's your goal? What do you want to do? So, like, what do you kind of aiming for? So we look at those three things, and then I do a meditation in the morning too. And I also have this kind of physical grid that I have to print out, because I can't, if stuff lives on the computer, it's like it's gone in my brain. It's like, oh, it's filed, it's done, it's not there. But if there's an actual physical paper sitting on it sits in the hallway bookshelf, I pass it, and it's like, okay, it's got my little daily exercises that I do, physical exercises, got my meditation, and then it's got some little like mental exercises like trance, hypnosis, well, all these kind of things. But putting them there makes me take them seriously and look and see, like, oh, did I do that yet? Nope. Okay, gonna do that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this goes to show how our old souls, when we just need physical paper.
Right.
I feel that. But on the topic of hypnosis, because you brought it up, and trance and all these things, I actually worked with a hypnotherapist, a few years back, and it was one of the most helpful things I've done. And that
Mm,
was also something that I think a lot of people don't think about, don't realize, or have negative connotations about, or are afraid of, just don't know enough about it. But it's extremely effective at rewiring your habits and your, like, on a subconscious level, so that it can be easier, so you can actually develop the intuitive, like, reminders of, oh yeah, you have this tool, or oh yeah, think about it like this, or whatever, the longer you go with it. So can you, because you're a certified hypnosis practitioner now, congratulations on that, that's so
yay.
exciting. It suits you so well. Can you talk more on hypnosis, what it is, the myths, and like whatever, and how it can actually help people build the routine so that they don't have to suffer so much?
Yeah, so I just took this wonderful intensive with Melissa Tears that actually your last guest, Mattia, told me about, because they took it, I don't know, a year ago or something, which was like just amazing. So a person that, Melissa is a master hypnotist. The things that I'm learning, that I learned in there and learn as I'm practicing this with my people, is that it's this crazy thing that's just like, we all think it's like so mysterious and like impossible and complex or something to change our brains. Do you know what I mean? It seems like it's like the Wizard of Oz or something. It's like this thing that just like seems behind the curtain and you don't know how to do it. But it's like, it's not rocket science. It is, I mean, it's neuroscience, but it's the way that it manifests is so simple. It's certain ways that your brain stores memories, a certain way that your brain stores, approaches stress or habits. Like, so for example, one of the beautiful things that Melissa talks about a lot is that our brains, like when we're in stress, our brains go down this like habit road, habitually negative. Like a lot of us just have these negative habit roads. So it's just like, for the example of the podcast, my habit road is like, oh, I'm a shitty public speaker, go down the habit road. So I think like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast. My brain goes like, oh my God, I'm going to crash and burn. It's going to be awful, blah, 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 blah. And this is kind of like a conversational hypnosis technique. You basically interrupt that thought. Like as soon as you recognize that you're going down that shitty path, you want to interrupt it, because the more you do it, like your brain always wants to do the easiest thing. Your brain wants to use the least calories, right? So it just wants to do like, it does not give a fuck. It wants to take like the easiest path. So it's going to go down the path that it knows. So you need to interrupt that and kind of grow a new path. So you interrupt it by doing like what we were talking about, like the passing a ball from hand to hand, or there's this thing called EFT, like emotional freedom technique, where you tap on your head and you tap on your face in various places. You can even just do something like shake your hands above your head. So all you want to do above your heart level, all you want to do is just like interrupt that thought pattern, basically. And once you interrupt that thought pattern, and I know none of this sounds like hypnosis, but it's just conversational hypnosis or self-hypnosis. Once you interrupt that thought, so you're going like, oh my God, I'm going to crash and burn on the podcast, blah, 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 blah. Interrupt, okay, shake, 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 interrupt that thought. And you think, how do I want to feel? And anybody can do this. So what I'm describing right now, your brain starts to go down some shitty path. You interrupt it by just like shake your hands above your head for a minute, right? Then ask yourself, how do I want to feel? I don't want to feel like a failure and hopeless and scared. No. How do I want to feel? I want to feel confident. I want to feel fun. I want to feel light about it, right? And so it's like kind of get myself in, like, what does that feel like in my body? If it were feel fun and exciting and confident. Okay, if I felt confident, my spine would be straight and my eyes would be clear, right? And I would have like a full heart, wholehearted sensation. So I kind of get into that feeling. And then I just make like a little mental movie. So it's just like I imagine a screen with a little movie on it. And I play that movie as if I am the way that I want to be on the podcast. And I literally did that this morning as I was walking. It's like, okay, Jen and I, just like we're having right now, Jen and I are having a good time. We're just talking, we're smiling at each other, we're enjoying each other's stories, we're just talking the way that we normally geek out on like life and coaching, right? Anyway, right? So I imagine that in the picture and like, what does that feel like? I sink down into that. Like I kind of just drop down into that movie. And then I imagine, and for myself at the end, I imagine a timeline. And I go into the future where I'm somebody who is just like so at ease with podcasts and having conversations about coaching. I just love it. And so I'm totally at ease. I feel that wholesome confidence. I feel that joy and that just kind of freedom and fun, that lightheartedness. And I get a feeling, I let that be like a color, like kind of a golden, sparkly, glowy color on the timeline. And then I just infuse it. So the timeline goes from the future, present, all the way to the past. And I just infuse that whole time with that golden, glowy, sparkly, feeling so good and confident feeling, and let it just like go back and heal all those moments in the past when I choked in public speaking, and bring it back to the present and just like sit and feel it in myself. And then I'm there. And for somebody, and that's it. And for somebody to want, so for somebody, you can literally do this in 2 minutes by yourself. You don't have to, but you can get yourself in a very light hypnotic state by just imagining yourself walking down a beautiful staircase and getting more and more relaxed as you walk down each step. As a practitioner, I can do it for people, but you can also do it yourself. So you're just like 10, I'm walking down, 9, I'm feeling more relaxed, go down to the staircase. And when you get to the bottom of the staircase, you imagine that movie. Like I'm making a movie of how I want to feel when I'm on the podcast. Boom, done. That's it. And that process, even though it's so simple and kind of normal, it's actually rewiring your brain, which is just this phenomenal, amazing thing that you're just these very simple, practical things can just like literally rewire your brain.
Oh, absolutely. And that sounds so wonderful, right? That's like what I think a lot of people actually really want, is like they don't want to stay in these really terrible states of anxiety, but it can be addictive, like honestly, right? Like feeling stressed, being like, I have no time, I have to do this, right? I can't take a break right now. Like even when you have the thought like, oh, maybe I should like take a break and take a breath, it's like, no, I can't. But what you're saying is like, it's not even what I think traditionally people think of hypnosis, of like going really, really deep and like the clock in your face or whatever,
No.
you know, how media
You
has
are
made
getting very
hypnosis.
sleepy.
Yeah, like hypnosis at a very fundamental level, at least the way that I understand it, maybe you can expand on it too, is just being in a really relaxed state, right? It's a more meditative state than anything, where you're just open to more suggestions because your fear, as in your egos and all those things, are less online. And now your brain is just like, okay, I'm open to actually like having to change. Because if you're just doing it, I think, as like a fully awake, aware, whatever, if you suggest change to yourself, you're going to go through that resistance of like, no, I don't have time. But if you're relaxed and your body feels that, then you're like, okay, now I can actually see that I don't have to be stressed right now, that I don't
Yes.
have to be whatever, and actually go take a walk or do this one technique with a ball that I can literally be
Yeah.
sitting down. But if you're
Yeah.
fully awake with your and whatever, it's like, no, I can't even
Yeah.
do that.
Right. Well, Melissa, it's interesting that you're saying that, because Melissa, the way Melissa Tiers talks about it, which I find very useful, is that you think that there's normally a wall kind of between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. And your unconscious is so powerful. Like, I don't remember the percentage, but it's like your conscious brain is something like 3 or 5%, max 10. I'm not remembering the numbers, but it's like a very small percentage of the power of your freaking brain. Like, your unconscious is like this enormous power, and it processes things much differently and much faster than your normal brain. So if you can access, and many of your like traumas and all kinds of things are stored, are, you know, I don't want to like get beyond my skill level here, but I just know that like a lot of the things are stored in your unconscious subconscious brain, right? So if Melissa talks about it as like, if you think of there's a wall between the two, then, you know, kind of in hypnosis, even a light hypnosis, by the way, you can do very deep hypnosis as well, right? But this is the thing we were talking about. It's like super light. It's like you're bending down that wall to let them communicate together. And so the things that you tell yourself in your conscious brain become so much more powerful if they're connected, if they're like kind of speaking to and connecting to your unconscious, right? So that same thing, that's just like affirmations that we might tell ourselves, that I do all the time, that are very useful, but it's like, you know, it's just like, okay, I'm a great public speaker, right? If I'm saying that to my unconscious brain, connecting with my unconscious brain, connecting to the deep feeling of being a great public speaker, it's like so much more powerful than if I'm just in that little conscious realm.
You're saying like this is light hypnosis, but it can go really deep. What is an example of going really deep with that?
And like I said, I don't want to get like I don't want to pretend to have like a skill level that I don't yet. I'm definitely a hypnosis practitioner, but I'm just starting on my journey with that. So in my understanding, the way that I've been doing it, the way that Melissa's kind of, one way that she taught us, is like we start with a kind of like a conversational approach, where you're kind of more on the little bit conscious level, and then you like go into a relaxation technique like that. You know, either you can do like a full body relax, or you can do walking down the stairs, or there's so many, or like, you know, putting your hand up, or there's all these or expanding your consciousness from 1 to 10. So basically it's with your voice and your words, you're like getting the person into that deeper relaxation, and then you can like deepen that, right? So you can start with that, and then you can do like another kind of layer of deepening, and then, you know, and then that one, and then in another case, after you are in that deeper case, you can kind of like ask them, you're basically asking the person to connect to their unconscious wisdom, which is the beautiful part. Because in our coaching training with Simone, the mastermind that we were in with Simone Soul, like we're always talking about our true identity. So basically just like our deep self, our deep inner wisdom and knowledge, right? So it's the same thing in my mind in the deep hypnosis. My only interest ever is in connecting somebody with their deepest inner wisdom that we can see when we kind of put down that wall between the conscious and unconscious.
Yeah, and that's beautiful because that's where, just to be safe, you don't want to say it, but hypnosis can rewire trauma 100%. Like that's
Yeah,
part of
and
what
that's
I
past
was
my
doing.
level, but yeah,
It is
100%. I
it
think
is
that can.
possible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes.
100%.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of those beliefs about yourself and the world and how things are broken or exist is in your subconscious. And being able to even just access it lightly, right? From the just the standpoint of you notice what's currently triggering you, what currently your fear is, and being able to deal with that already will go a long way. But I think for people listening, I want people to also know that there are so many different modalities to get support and actually change.
Yes.
If you, especially if you think you are like uniquely fucked up or you're broken in some way that's beyond repair, or something has been like, really looming on you for decades, something like just lay hypnosis, meditation, people who are like, oh, just meditate, just do yoga, whatever, like that doesn't resonate. Like there are deeper ways to integrate this work that
Yes.
can go beyond the simple like conscious mind stuff or actions or habit building.
Well, it's just like, there are so, like you said, there are so many levels and kind of layers of the work. And it's like, definitely sometimes somebody needs like a trauma therapist or something like that, or a hypnotherapist, I think they might be called. Like if they're interested in the hypnosis modality, they might use like a hypnotherapist. And then there's so many things that we can address, which is even self-hypnosis can address, which is basically like a lot of what somebody like me, or a lot of the people that work in hypnosis or can be teaching you to do the hypnosis yourself, because it's so incredibly powerful and useful to do it all the time. It's like, great, sure, I can help you do that, but it's like, let's give the person, teach them how to fish also, right? While we're doing that, like we can use both of them at the same time. We can help them, like as a hypnotist, I can help somebody and I can also teach them to help themselves. So it's like, there's just like this vast world that we can help people with, with this modality. So like this, totally backing up everything you said, like with that.
So just to wrap up here for today, we can have you back on whenever. Oftentimes, when we talk about suffering and seeing our own suffering, we're doing it a lot of times just without realizing that it's based off of fear or socialized conditioning, or we just don't have the perspective or self-awareness yet to get out of it. But in Buddhism, there's literally a proverb that's like, life is suffering, right? And when we want to believe that there's something else out there for us, that we don't have to suffer, it can feel maybe unbelievable. What are some thoughts or things that you have seen for yourself or that you do with your clients that helps people kind of break down that wall of there's no other way to live, like I can't be at peace, that I am just chaos in itself, like there is just suffering that happens within me? How can people get out of that?
Yeah, that's a really deep one. So first of all, just, and you know this, but like in Buddhism, there's the four noble truths. The first one is like there is suffering, right? There's a cause for suffering is the second one. The third one is I can't remember the wording, but there's a solution for suffering. There's a way out of suffering, and the way out of suffering is like the path. There's the path to the way out of suffering. Okay. So it's not just that there's suffering. There's suffering, there's a cause for it, there's a way to stop it, there's a way out of, it can stop, and there's a cessation of suffering, and then there's the path to the cessation of suffering. So it's not just like this dismal, like, oh my God, it's all horrible kind of thing. And we know, like just in our life, in my life, like I'm somebody who, until 3 years ago, I had a good life. I was married happily. I had a good job, blah, 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 like all the things. And I was suffering like a mofo. I was so unhappy in so many ways. I was deeply insecure, deeply not connected to doing what I wanted to be doing. I was overweight. I was stressed. There were just all these, like kind of almost every aspect of my life had this pretty heavy level of suffering in it. And then literally just learning to reframe my thoughts. I mean, it sounds like hocus pocus or something, but literally learning to like, this is 3 freaking years ago that I would wake up, like, and I just really want to say this, like, I was in this one job for 15 years. It was a good job. I had a wonderful boss. I loved my environment. I worked at the University of California, San Francisco, beautiful people, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, I did not want to be in that freaking job. Now I know, like, I wanted to be a life coach. I didn't know that. Like, now I'm doing my soul work. I know that now, right? But I wasn't doing my soul work. So I woke up every day. I didn't want to go to freaking work. I was stressed and mad and, just like all the things, right? And I was like, I can't even explain. Like, it makes me so sad now when I think of how many people are out there, because I just didn't know that you literally, like, all I had to do was like change the way that I think, reframe my thoughts, which is not like some big mysterious process. It's like kind of the things that we've been talking about today. And then also just like calm my nervous system, because I was just like this anxious stress ball all the time. It was like, calm my nervous system, reframe my thoughts. Like, that's all I literally had to do. And of course, I had to learn in these little baby steps how to start to do that. But literally the minute I started to do that, my life changed. I'll give you one more example for closing. In the middle, like, I just started to learn about basically reframing your thoughts. Basically just started to learn about, heard it on podcast, Brooke Castillo's podcast. I heard her talking about it. And I was just listening to her free stuff. She's talking about you can change your thoughts and change your life. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Sounded good, but whatever. So one day my husband Lobsang is going on a camping trip with some buddies. And it's a man trip. It's a guy trip. They're going to go to Yosemite and go camping. And for no good reason at all, I felt so, it's not like I didn't want to go with them, but I felt so like hurt and kind of left out. And I was just feeling like a little pity party. Like, oh, I'm going to be here by myself. I'm going to be working on my I'm going to have to go to work and he's going to take off and I love Yosemite. They're going to have a great time. I was just feeling sorry for myself that I was not going. Right. And it was a guy's trip. It was like, nobody would, whatever. So I was walking along one day and I just thought, like, okay, if this change your thought stuff work, like, okay, like, how would that work? It would be like, well, what would make me happy? And I'm just like scrambling. I don't know what to think, right? So, okay, what would make me happy? So I have these 3 days and he's going to be gone. And instead of being miserable, how could I be happy? And it was like 4 days. It's just like, oh, the minute I started to think of that, it was like, oh my God, I've been working on this book. I've been wanting to write this book and I never have time. And it's just like, I could do a book retreat for myself. I could just even stay at home. And literally the minute I thought that, I was just like, oh my God, that sounds so fun to me. And then I'll have those special dinners for myself and I'm just going to watch my special movies at night. And it was like, it sounded like the best freaking thing ever. It's like, I couldn't wait for them to go on their retreat then. Right. And then I wrote from that. It was like from that retreat, it was like I finished the heart of my book, and that kind of started me on this path. So it's just like literally just like from one minute to the next, it's guiding my mind to ask myself a better question, which was, instead of like, what's wrong with this scenario, it's just like, how could I be happy in this moment? And like, literally, I think everything that I've done kind of since then is just like a little step on the path of just kind of asking myself all the time, what will make me happier? What would be better? What would be useful? What would be more fun? And now it's like, what would be more me?
Yes.
That's it.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing all of that and being here today. I think that the big takeaway is that it can be so much more simple to lower your suffering, to not be so stressed, to access happiness and joy that everybody says they want, but it's actually so much more simple to get there than people think. And I really appreciate you being here, sharing all your thoughts and your wisdom with all of us. How can people find you to work with you or, get your book?
Thank you, Jen. It's just my total joy and honor to be with you. I love you so much. I'm so glad to be on your podcast. They can find me at yolandaobannon.com, YOLANDAOBANNON.com. And I have one-on-one coaching available you can learn about on the site, and also my book. And also I have a self-care course that's available there that people can do, like a in your own time self-care course on the site.
Fantastic.
And I would be so happy to, meet any of your people.
Yeah. And what was your book called?
Manifesting Mastery. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, and you're also on Instagram. All of these links will be linked in the show notes, as well as your guys's Tibetan travel website in case anybody wants to go to Tibet. So all of those links will be in the show notes. But thank you again for being on here. It's been incredible. And I hope that, you have a beautiful day ahead of you.
Thank you, Jen.